A customer in the United States places an order for prescription glasses through a cross-border e-commerce site, and a week later, a finished pair arrives at their door for a fraction of what the exact same frame would cost inside a mall LensCrafters just a few miles away. That is real. It's already happening at genuine scale, and the American eyewear market it's quietly undercutting is controlled more tightly by a single company than almost any other consumer product category in the country. Every figure in this video comes from verified financial disclosures, court filings, and government trade data, because a claim this significant deserves real scrutiny rather than just a viral number. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly who actually controls what Americans pay for glasses, how Chinese manufacturing is starting to route around that control, and where that challenge still falls short. Here's where this story actually has to start, because you can't understand why a single company's grip on American eyewear matters this much without first correcting exactly who that company is. EssilorLuxottica, formed through the 2018 merger of France's Essilor and Italy's Luxottica, is a French-Italian company headquartered jointly in Paris and Milan, not an American company at all. Here's why that distinction matters directly to this video's title, though. While the company itself isn't American, the American eyewear market is precisely where its control runs deepest, and that specific American dominance is genuinely documented, not exaggerated for effect. Here's the scale of that American footprint, according to consumer advocacy research tracking the company's holdings. When you walk into LensCrafters, Pearl Vision, Sunglass Hut, Target Optical, or Four Eyes, you're shopping inside a store the same parent company owns or directly controls. Even though the EssilorLuxottica name never actually appears on the sign out front, think about what that ownership structure actually means for an ordinary American shopper trying to compare prices between stores, walking from a Sunglass Hut to a LensCrafters inside the same shopping mall, genuinely believing you're comparing two competing retailers when both storefronts ultimately report to the exact same corporate parent. Here's how deep that same company's control over the American market actually extends beyond retail stores alone, and this is the part that turns simple market dominance into something considerably more structurally significant. EssilorLuxottica, through its Luxottica subsidiary, also owns EyeMed Vision Care, the second largest vision insurance provider in the United States, with approximately 43 million American members whose employers purchase vision coverage on their behalf. Here's exactly how that ownership chain plays out for an ordinary EyeMed member, according to detailed reporting on the company's structure. An employer pays premiums to EyeMed. EyeMed directs its members toward in-network optical retailers, and the specific retailers EyeMed's own website lists as in-network are LensCrafters, Target Optical, Pearl Vision, and Glasses.com. Every single one of them also owned by the exact same parent company collecting the original insurance premium. Think about what that closed loop actually represents financially. The same company collects a premium through its insurance arm, then collects a retail markup when the insured customer walks into one of its own stores, then collects a manufacturing profit on the actual frames sold inside that store. 3 separate revenue streams generated from a single customer transaction, all flowing back to one corporate parent that, according to that same reporting, doesn't disclose that relationship to its own insurance members. Here's the specific American market history that shows this concentration of control wasn't accidental, but was actively opposed and warned about years before it fully solidified. When Essilor and Luxottica first announced their nearly $49 billion merger, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren publicly argued the deal threatened to create what she specifically called a vision care monopoly, warning it would combine the world's largest eyewear company with the world's largest optical lens manufacturer, alongside America's second largest vision insurance company and America's largest optical retailer, all inside a single corporate structure. Here's how that warning has actually played out in the years since the merger was approved. EssilorLuxottica currently faces an active antitrust class action lawsuit, filed in 2023 in federal court in San Francisco, naming the company alongside 48 separate co-defendants, including manufacturers and licensed fashion houses. Here's a separate, already resolved legal case that shows this isn't purely a story about pricing power. LensCrafters spent roughly a decade advertising its AccuFit digital measurement system, marketed specifically as 5 times more accurate than traditional prescription measurement methods, a claim that turned out to be false, resulting in a $39 million class action. Settlement approved in September of 2024, covering customers who'd purchased premium lenses based on that inaccurate marketing claim between 2013 and 2023. Think about what a decade-long false advertising judgment involving the precision of an actual vision measurement tool actually reveals about the stakes here. This isn't simply a story about paying more for a fashion accessory. It's a story about a company facing real, adjudicated legal consequences for misrepresenting the accuracy of equipment used to measure people's actual eyesight. Here's the number that shows exactly how far the gap between production cost and retail price has stretched inside the tightly controlled American system. Independent reporting, including an investigation conducted by the founder of LensCrafters himself after touring Chinese manufacturing facilities, found that quality eyeglass frames typically cost between $4 and $8 to actually produce, with designer quality frames carrying labels like Prada costing around $15 to manufacture, while those same finished frames routinely sell inside American retail stores for $800 or more. Think about what a markup that size actually represents once you understand the full ownership chain sitting behind it. This isn't ordinary retail margin covering rent and staff wages at a single independent shop. It's a structural gap the same vertically integrated company controls and profits from at every single link along the way, from the factory floor, through the insurance company, through the retail counter. Here's where China's Danyang region enters this exact story, and here's why its rise matters specifically to American consumers, rather than remaining an abstract manufacturing statistic. Danyang, a city in China's Jiangsu province that the eyewear industry itself commonly calls the world's capital of glasses, produces more than 400 million eyeglass lenses every single year, accounting for roughly half of the entire world's total lens production, manufactured across more than 1,600 separate enterprises. Here's the detail that matters most for understanding the American market specifically. There's a very real chance a meaningful share of the lenses inside. EssilorLuxottica's own American retail stores were originally ground and polished inside this exact same Chinese manufacturing cluster, regardless of which brand name or which in-network retailer's name ultimately ends up on the box a customer receives. Here's how that same manufacturing base has increasingly started reaching American consumers directly, bypassing the traditional retail chain entirely. When a customer anywhere in the world, including the United States, places an order for custom prescription glasses through cross-border e-commerce, that order routes directly to a lens supplier inside Danyang, leveraging a fully integrated local production chain that handles design, manufacturing, and logistics together, typically completing the entire process from order to delivery within about a week. Here's the number that shows this direct channel has already reached genuine commercial scale. Danyang now processes more than 15 million custom lens orders annually from international customers, alongside $661 million in glasses and related exports in a single recent year, a figure that grew more than 18% compared to the year before. Here's why removing the traditional American retail and insurance chain entirely changes the actual price a customer pays, beyond simply cutting out a single middleman's cut. A conventional pair of branded glasses purchased through the American vision insurance system, the exact system EssilorLuxottica largely controls end-to-end, passes through a genuinely long sequence of markups. A designer licensing fee, a wholesale distribution cost, a retail markup at the optical counter, and frequently, an insurance administration cost layered on top, with EssilorLuxottica's own vertically integrated structure, meaning the identical company frequently collects a share at every single one of those steps simultaneously. Here's what ordering directly from a Danyang manufacturer specifically eliminates from that entire chain. No separate designer licensing fee, no wholesale distributor, no traditional optical retail markup, and no insurance administrative layer, leaving a price that can reflect much closer to the genuine $4 to $15 production cost documented in independent reporting, rather than the multi-$100 retail price that exact same frame would carry inside an American LensCrafters or Sunglass Hut. Before going any further into where this direct-to-consumer shift genuinely still falls short of replacing the traditional American system, it's worth pulling back and understanding the one real complication specifically facing Chinese eyewear, trying to reach American customers that doesn't apply nearly as strongly in other markets. Here's the honest trade complication worth including directly. Unlike the broader global export strategy Chinese manufacturers have pursued across Europe, Africa, and Latin America, direct shipments into the United States specifically remain subject to America's own tariff policy on Chinese imports, an ongoing trade friction that can add real cost back onto glasses ordered directly from Chinese manufacturers by American customers, partially offsetting the production cost advantage covered earlier in this video. Think about what that specific complication actually means for how quickly this shift can realistically continue inside the American market specifically, compared to markets without that same tariff exposure. Even with a dramatic $4 to $8 production cost advantage, American tariff policy adds a real variable cost specifically onto the Chinese side of this equation that doesn't exist for a European or Latin American customer placing the identical order, meaning the American price advantage, while still often substantial, isn't quite as clean or as large as the raw production cost gap alone would suggest. Here's the honest concession worth sitting with directly, because a fair account of this story has to include exactly where EssilorLuxottica's American dominance remains genuinely intact, despite this growing pressure. Here's the clearest evidence the company's core American and global business remains strong. EssilorLuxottica reported group revenue of approximately 28.5 billion euros in 2025, with net income around 2.4 billion euros, run by roughly 204,000 employees across more than 17,700 stores worldwide. A company whose scale and financial performance remain genuinely massive, not a business already visibly shrinking under pressure from cheaper Chinese alternatives. Here's the practical reason a growing volume of factory direct orders hasn't yet translated into a comparable dent in that revenue. A pair of glasses ordered directly from a Chinese manufacturer typically arrives without the in-person eye examination, professional prescription verification, physical frame fitting, warranty coverage, or insurance network integration that EyeMed's 43 million American members specifically rely on as part of their existing coverage, meaning these two purchasing paths, however similar the physical product might be, aren't yet fully interchangeable for every category of American customer. Think about what that distinction actually means for how quickly this shift can realistically continue. Cheap, factory direct eyewear is winning over price-sensitive Americans buying straightforward prescriptions or simple non-prescription sunglasses outside their insurance network. Entirely a genuinely significant and growing slice of the market. But it hasn't yet meaningfully displaced the specific American customers who depend on EyeMed's insurance integration or who value in-person fitting from a retailer they can physically walk back into. So here's the full picture, start to finish. EssilorLuxottica, a French-Italian company rather than an American one, built the single most vertically integrated eyewear business specifically inside the American market, simultaneously owning the manufacturing, the brand licensing, the retail stores Americans shop at, and the vision insurance covering 43 million American members. A concentration Senator Elizabeth Warren warned about before the merger was even approved, and one that's since generated both an active federal antitrust lawsuit and a $39 million false advertising settlement. Danyang, a single Chinese manufacturing hub responsible for roughly half the world's eyeglass lenses, has increasingly started routing around that entire American retail and insurance chain through cross-border e-commerce, now processing more than 15 million international custom orders annually, even while American tariff policy specifically adds real friction to that channel that doesn't exist in other export markets. What you're actually watching in this story is the same disruption pattern that's played out across American retail again and again over the past 2 decades. A vertically integrated incumbent that built enormous, durable profit margins, specifically by controlling every single link in a long, largely invisible supply chain, facing genuine pressure from exactly the direction that kind of business model is always most vulnerable to, a manufacturer close enough to the actual factory floor to simply sell the finished product straight to the American customer, skipping every layer of markup the incumbent depended on stacking one on top of another. EssilorLuxottica's grip on American eyewear hasn't broken, and its own 2025 financial results prove the core business remains genuinely strong. But for the first time in decades, American consumers have a real working alternative to the exact company that spent years building an empire, specifically designed to make sure they never needed one. If breakdowns like this, the real ownership structures and the real numbers behind America's biggest hidden monopolies, are useful to you, hit like and subscribe, because there's more of this coming, including a closer look at how the active 2023 antitrust case against EssilorLuxottica actually plays out in federal court. So here's the honest question. For the comments, does discovering that your insurance company, your optical retailer, and your frame's designer label are all secretly the same business change how you think about what you're actually paying for at the eye doctor? Or does skipping the in-person exam and insurance coverage still make the traditional route worth the extra cost to you? I read every single one.